Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Dog Projections. I'm Lucas. We got Eric here as always.
Hey guys.
And today we'll be doing a very interesting video between a presidential election between Taylor Swift and Marsha Blackburn, who is basically Taylor Swift's a political arch enemy. So, why do we think of this? Let me play a video of Marsha Blackburn and the Taylor Swift feud.
As if we have social security, if we have the you are going to be the one who will be cut off because the second for revenue. And you know, with having a campaign, but how would you assume that because when you look at Marxist socialist societies that don't allow women to dress or sing or even say or entertain or take music that you have that don't allow protection of private intellectual property rights.
So as you can see, they're probably not on the best of terms. So we'll be doing a video that will be analyzing a potential presidential election between them in 2024, and we'll see who comes out on top. With that being said, let's get right into it. Kind of a background on this rivalry. In 2018, Taylor Swift endorsed Marsha Blackburn's opponent, Phil Bredesen, for Senate in Tennessee. The race was considered more of a toss-up because Phil Bredesen was considered a pretty good candidate, as he was very popular and he attracted many voters. He did end up losing to Marsha Blackburn, who is now a senator there. And this rivalry kind of continued in I think January 2020, Taylor Swift published Miss Americana, which is her documentary. And there she talked about speaking out against Marsha Blackburn and discussing exactly why she didn't like her. And yeah, Taylor Swift kind of did come out as a Democrat in that video. She didn't discuss politics at all before the endorsement. Wow, not Hawaii Red, before the endorsement. But, since then, she has been pretty active on Democratic issues. Like, I believe she said that she's pro-choice. She's, pro-gun control and, pro-LGBTQ rights and, all of the social issues. We don't really know that much about her economic stances, however. So those are our safe states. I guess I'll start off by first putting Colorado as likely. New Mexico is likely. These two should be pretty self-explanatory. Colorado might be pushing in the safe margin, actually. I guess we can head now to, Virginia, very highly college educated, which will prove to be very good for Taylor. So she generally does well with that younger college educated population. A lot of those people are her listeners, not to say that just because they listen to her means that they're going to vote for her, but that should help boost her a bit. Eric, how about you do Iowa and
Ohio? So these two states, no matter the candidates nowadays, will generally tend to lean Republican, and therefore Marsha Blackburn shouldn't have too much of an issue taking both of them. And for a lot of these states, it's very likely that Donald Trump will be campaigning for Marsha Blackburn, as Marsha Blackburn is pro-Trump and they do work together. And they, in this case, Donald Trump would be highly advocating for Marsha Blackburn. And since Donald Trump had very little issue winning these states, she would also not have any trouble winning these states. So they would probably both be in the likely margin.
Yeah, and I think that Taylor Swift might end up not doing that well with white working class voters, perhaps as well as Joe Biden did. I don't think she has as much of that appeal to that working class. I think she does much better with the college educated, but she would probably lag behind in states like Iowa and Ohio. Minnesota, I would also put as likely. Again, rural areas might be an issue in future elections, but I don't believe that that it will be impacting this one in particular. I think the suburbs and the big cities will be enough to pull Taylor through. Maine second, I think still very rural, still vote pretty Republican. Nebraska second, very college educated. Probably would also vote for Taylor Swift because she is pretty popular with that base. Alaska likely are. It's narrowing up in recent years. I think for the first time, we saw it going under 10 points in 2020. And South Carolina, I think we'll go slightly below 15. All right, Eric, why don't you discuss Florida?
Yep. So Florida is kind of an interesting state because, as you know, it is a historically swing state. But once again, there is a lot of Trump influence in this area now, especially due to the fact that he lives here. And, a lot of other pro-Trump candidates, such as, Matt Gaetz also represents Florida's district here. So they would have no issue with going out and campaigning for Marsha Blackburn because they're all pro-Trump and they will all speak out for one another. Really depends here also because Florida is, a particularly Hispanic state as compared to some other states in the area. So it would also really depend how they vote. But I still do think that Marsha Blackburn would be able to influence them, maybe kind of like in 20. So I do think it's going to go in a lean margin. That's just my general feeling as of now. And also, who knows what the, situation is going to be a couple of years from now and what the vibe is going to be in this area.
I agree. I think Marsha would run a very pro-Trump campaign. She has the tendency of, calling people far left Marxists, for example, like that video I just played at the beginning. She compared Taylor to being a Marxist, which is obviously not true, just because she supported a Democrat for Senate who actually was a very moderate Democrat for Senate. Does not make her a Marxist. And I think potentially what we saw in 2020, Donald Trump's strategy seemed to work, calling Joe Biden a socialist, because that seemed to, maybe the Cubans seem to be a little bit, afraid of that. So they've ended up voting for Trump in pretty big numbers. So, but they usually do tend to, but I'm guessing that, Cubans there also voted because of how strong the Republican Party is in Florida. They're very good at getting numbers out in Miami-Dade. And I think they vote out in higher numbers than they usually do. And that's another reason why we're putting it as lean, because the Florida Democratic Party at this point, it's pretty atrocious at getting voters to come out and vote. And let's head out to Nevada. Nevada, I would give lean D. I think that, Taylor Swift has decent appeal here. I think she would do probably just as well as Joe Biden. Again, the problem of Clark County trending red, it shouldn't be too much of a problem here, but overall, that would be lean D. Also quickly go through North Carolina. I think this would also be a lean R state. She would perform probably just as well as Joe Biden did, or it depends on how you say, because, Joe Biden did lose the state by, I believe, 1.6, 1.7 points. So, still a loss. But yeah, I don't think she's going to be able to gain enough with the rural areas here. I'll toss it over to Eric now for Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin's also another interesting state because it is also another highly contested state in this race because, as Florida, it is also historically contested. I really don't think Taylor Swift would be able to win this state for the reason that Wisconsin is, particularly highly, white worker class based. And based on who we're comparing, Marsha Blackburn v. Taylor Swift, I think, these workers would, or most of these workers at least would, favor Marsha Blackburn more. She does have more, experience with campaigning. She's probably mentioned white worker class people before in her own state. So, these people would probably appeal to her. Taylor Swift just doesn't have that much political experience in general. She doesn't really know how to deal with, these different demographics, such as, white working class. So I think for this slight reason, Marsha Blackburn would take Wisconsin in a tilt margin for that exact reason. Once again, going off of little information, but, it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that Joe Biden had a much stronger appeal for that type of class, and which is why he was able to win the state. But even with his appeal, he won very, very narrowly. His working class appeal, his background might play better with those members. We saw Hillary Clinton get some of the worst numbers in this area, probably ever for a Democratic candidate in a very long time. So with this one, we probably would go with Marsha Blackburn winning in a tilt. The state of Texas would be interesting. also very some strong Republicans here. Ted Cruz might campaign for her. I think Texas will probably stay blue. I don't think Hillary Clinton will do as well in the suburbs as Joe Biden did, but I think she could potentially make some gains with those Hispanics in southern Texas, where Joe Biden lost, quite a bit from what Hillary Clinton got. Maybe, she could try campaigning with other leaders in Texas to get those voters back, to vote for her. Now we're down to a couple states left. I'll head to New Hampshire first. I think New Hampshire is also pretty college educated based. Plus, Taylor Swift could have some Northeast appeal considering she is from the state of Pennsylvania. So I think this one will probably stay with what Joe Biden got in this state. Eric, I'll toss it over to you now for Arizona.
Based on the fact that Arizona is slowly leaning to the left and, it's growing in its suburban areas, Taylor Swift is kind of more likely to take the state, probably in a tilt. She wouldn't take it by much. Of course, Arizona is this new type of Democratic swing state, and it's not a full-fledged Democratic state. So the margin wouldn't be as huge. As I said, suburban, influence, white suburban influence Taylor Swift usually has, in a world where the type of people who listen to music also correlates with who they voted for, Taylor Swift would have the advantage. And also, pro-Trump Republicans don't really do well in Arizona, and that's exactly who Marsha Blackburn is. So that would also be a roadblock, in her attempt to campaign and bring out votes. Some of the undecided people would probably just go for Taylor Swift, considering who she's up against.
Yeah, I feel like Arizona is that one state where Marsha Blackburn has leaned into a relationship with Donald Trump way too much, to the point where, Taylor Swift even called her Trump in a wig. I think that Donald Trump, the influence of Donald Trump would end up impacting her performance in the state. Heading now to Michigan, I think Michigan she would probably do better. I think it's either lean or tilt. I think voters will probably go for her more. This is one of the more Democratic leaning swing states in the Midwest. I think she could help carry over that Joe Biden appeal in those big cities and perhaps in some of those suburbs. Actually, I'll move it to tilt because I think she might do a little bit worse in some of the suburban areas in Michigan, but she'll still probably win this state. I guess I'll take Pennsylvania. Eric will take Georgia. I guess I'll start with Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, she's from the state. I believe West Reading, Pennsylvania. I think she would do well enough in the suburbs to win. I don't think she'll do as well as Joe Biden did in the Philadelphia suburbs. I don't think she, appeals that much to those type of people, but she should do pretty well in general, of course, with that younger audience. I think she would win this one at tilt, less than Joe Biden's 1.1. I would say she would win by, 0.5, 0.6. So I am giving Pennsylvania tilt. I'll toss over Eric to do Georgia.
Georgia kind of follows a similar story as Michigan, as Lucas just discussed. It would also probably go in a tilt D. Once again, we're still a couple of years away from Georgia, and who knows what the demographics will change in just that short of a time. But as of now, we do see Georgia's suburbs growing. Its white population is decreasing, and its minority population is increasing. And also the metropolitan area of Georgia, like the Atlanta area, and other metropolitan areas in Georgia, are also becoming more and more Democratic. And following our general rule of thumb based on presidential history, urban areas tend to go more for Democrats rather than Republicans. So keeping this in mind, and keeping in mind that, Georgian statesmen like John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, and maybe even Joe Biden, who's not from Georgia, but will probably help campaign for Taylor Swift if she were to be a nominee in this state, because it's going to be quite contested.
And with that being said, that is the end of the video for today. We have Taylor Swift defeating Marsha Blackburn, President Taylor Swift, 293 to 245. And, that's the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please hit like one. If you like our content, please subscribe. And we'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.